Hey everybody, welcome to Mortgage Ballers. My name is Rich Hanlin, and today I wanted to go through one of my first-time homebuyer webinars. Just record this. I wanted to get this going. We got the new year coming. We got a lot of great things happening, and we don't know if the rates are going to keep coming down or if we're going to have a pullback in the values, but we actually might have both. We just have a lot of cool things going on right now that could help people get into houses that maybe have been holding on. But I wanted to go through this, see if I can't get some people some help as we're trying to figure out how to get people into houses and to meet them where they're at with the fears and anxieties and maybe misunderstandings of what's going on and what's available. So let's go through this and let's kind of go through it together. And if you have any questions, you can let me know. But basically, my name is Rich Hanlin. I'm with Expert Home Lending. I've been helping people get into homes for almost 35 years. Um, I work for Expert Home Lending. I said that. I'm in 46 different states. I have no limitations. I have a lot of different programs from FHA to USDA to VA to conventional. Each one's a little different. Some people qualify for all four of those type of products, and we can line them all up and we can figure out what works best for you. So let's go through some of the myths, some of the worries, some of the concepts, and let's talk about some of these loans starting right now. So basically, when you go from renter to homeowner, let's start with your generational wealth legacy journey today. Rent is temporary, ownership is powerful. Rent pays a bill, ownership builds a future. Owning a home is the foundation of financial freedom. I'm not just making that up. There's proven studies that say that there is a large gap between those who have taken a chance to own real estate and those who have never owned real estate. And that gap is huge, especially here in the United States. There we go. So let's talk about that gap, renting versus home ownership. What renting really does, rent goes up almost every year. You build zero equity, you pay someone else's mortgage, you stay on the big hamster wheel, just going in circles, right? What owning does, payments stay stable, you build wealth every month, your home becomes an asset, you take control of your future. Um, this is a true statement. Rent is 100% interest, right? Because you get nothing of what you pay goes towards the principal, right? When you're paying somebody else's mortgage payment, they're getting benefit. You're getting zero equity, zero ownership, zero gain. And this is the chart I'm talking about. How have rents changed since 1960 versus home ownership? Yes, getting into a house sometimes is at, equal to, or a little bit higher than what you're currently paying in rent. But the one thing that you can count on every year thereafter is that if you have a fixed rate loan, your house payment will stay pretty much level. And the reason I say pretty much is because you have taxes and insurance. Taxes and insurance can change, but your mortgage payment won't change. And so very little adjustment as long as your property taxes and homeowners insurance, depending on where you live, stay pretty much even. But even with those possibilities, the cost of rent has gone up astronomically since 1960, almost 170%. Home ownership, the cost of home ownership, even with the higher values, right now is sitting about 120%. So time is not your friend. If you're thinking, well, I'll just wait, I'll just wait, I'll just wait. Well, unless you're living for free somewhere, which some people do, they live with family, but most people don't. Your rents are going to outrun you. So eventually you've got to consider taking a chance and doing something. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Why does home ownership really matter? The numbers don't lie. Homeowners have 40 times more wealth than renters. Home values historically rise over time. Every payment builds equity. Rent for 10 years equals zero equity. But if you owned for 10 years, you'd have equity that you've built up by paying your payment, plus appreciation as real estate has gone up over 315% when you look at the variations and the power of home ownership and wealth building. It says it right here. Let me read this to you. Home ownership is more than just having a place to live. It's also a key way to build wealth. As you pay off your mortgage loan, your equity in the home grows, and any increase in the home value also adds to your net worth. And that's from a group called the Motley Fool. A lot of people follow their financial information. I know this, and here's a good quote. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. And that goes back to that same principle that we just spoke about. And if we go back and look at that, this is what they're talking about: the cost of time and money. Rent continues to go up at an unprecedented pace. Even though values go up, they're not going up as fast as the cost of rent. All right, let's keep moving. Building generational wealth. Let's talk about that. Why does home ownership matter in the long term? Well, you have stability for your family, wealth that can be passed down from one generation to the next. It can help you put people in college, your kids, yourself, retirement help, the cost of opportunity. And a lot of people say, well, what are you talking about, opportunity? Well, you get enough equity and you could actually use that equity to purchase another residence of an investment property. Now you own two properties that are growing over time, but the renter's paying you rent and covering your mortgage. That's what we talk about, the opportunity. But it could be other opportunities. Maybe you come across an investment that you want to put money into. Well, you could use equity out of your home that's growing automatically every single month to do those kind of things. There's some myths that go with being homeowners, and those myths are this. I need 20% down. It's like, no, you don't need 20% down, which we're going to prove here in a second. My credit isn't good enough. Well, what's good enough? How do you know what's good enough? Did you go to Bank of America and they said it wasn't good enough? Or did you speak to a mortgage broker that deals with variations in credit and takes off all the limiting factors? A lot of people get to this mindset, I'll never qualify. Well, you're wrong. Sometimes we have to put a little plan together to help you qualify, to come alongside you and help you build whatever that credit profile is needed after we meet with you and look at what you have going on. But as you're going to see here in a minute, you do not have to be perfect to be a homeowner. All right, here's the truth. Most renters qualify much sooner than they think. That's because we get information from one source. We assume that we have something on our credit that can't be overcome. And the truth is, you can buy a house pretty much with anything on your credit, right? There's nothing on your credit other than a bankruptcy, and that's just more of a time frame than anything else. So home ownership isn't about today. It's about the next generation. We have people coming from all over the world to get into the United States. They get here and the entire family comes together to figure out how to buy a house. They're coming from countries where you can't own a house. Either it's not allowed or they just don't have the mechanism in place like we do here in the United States. And it's incredible watching these people work so hard to turn over every stone to save money to get a house, how they help each other, multiple generations in one house. But those born in the United States, we seem to be okay with renting somebody else's house and paying somebody else's mortgage. And we talked about it. There's a 40 times difference in net worth between those two individuals. as they start to continue through their lives. Owning real estate is still one of the most incredible opportunities, generational wealth changing items that a family can do. Let's talk about the type of loans. All right. There's FHA loans, USDA loans, VA loans, conventional loans. We're going to go through all of them, but let's start with FHA loans because FHA loans are the most popular loan for first-time home buyers. Let's talk about what's a first-time home buyer. Maybe we should start with that because a lot of people don't realize what that is. And you think it's simple, but it's not. All the first-time home buyer is somebody who has not owned a home in the last 2 tax years. So in other words, if we looked at your taxes, your federal taxes, we would not see any home ownership and or write-offs of interest, right? It doesn't mean that you've never owned real estate. So after owning real estate, but you go 2 years without owning, you are back to being a first-time home buyer. So somebody who hasn't owned real estate in the last 2 years or who has never owned real estate is considered a first-time home buyer. So FHA loans qualify for that. You can only, because it's got to be a primary residence. You can't use them for rental properties. You got to live in the house. So down payment as low as 3.5%. Credit scores starting as low as 580. Flexible guidelines. You can use gift funds are allowed to help you from family members. And it's best for first-time homebuyers with limited savings or average credit. It allows for higher debt ratios. And I want to make sure I point that out again. See that 580 credit score? See, a lot of people go to Bank of America and they say, hey, we need a 700 credit score just to talk to you. So you assume you can't qualify. And then you find out later that you more than could qualify. And here's a little secret for you. You know, those that get to about a 620 credit score get the same interest rate as those with 800 credit scores when it comes to FHA loans. Now, 580 might have a small adjustment, but a lot of times we can look at that 580 and possibly help you adjust that credit score up depending on your time frame. But a 580 is more than adequate to get you in the house. So here's something to think about. You got to start where you are and use what you have. All right, let's talk about USDA loans. This is such a unique loan. It's kind of like a VA loan, except for those who have not been in the military. But a USDA loan allows for 0 down payment. And people say, I want that one. Go ahead, give me that one. The difference is it has 0 down payment. It's going to give you lower monthly payments. Why? Because it has a lower mortgage insurance threshold than the FHA loans. But it's designed for suburban and rural areas. It also has income limits that apply. Yes, you can buy a home with no money down. I get that. And when it works, it's one of the most incredible loans. Here's why, because you can actually go up to 102% of the appraised value, because sometimes, let's say you're buying a house for $300,000, it comes in at $310 on the value. They'll let you go up to 102% of the purchase price as long as the house appraises for more than the purchase price. So that could cover some of your closing costs, if not all your closing costs. So you literally could get into a house for $0. You might have a $500 appraisal or something like that, but not having to come up with the down payment, not having to come up with closing costs. You can work with your lender as well to get credits. You can work with your realtor to get any minor credits, as well as the sellers right now to get credits. It's an incredible loan as long as it meets the guidelines and as long as you meet the guidelines. If not, we typically fall back on the FHA loan. So we look at both these items when we talk to you. Okay, let's talk about VA loans. Somewhere along the line, somebody said that VA loans are bad, but maybe they were at one time, but I've been doing this 35 years. And I'm going to tell you right now, VA loans for those who qualify are some of the most incredible loans on the planet. They come with very low interest rates. Um, it's like our thank you to veterans, right? They also have zero down payment. They come with no monthly mortgage insurance. So, not just FHA with normal, USDA with lower, VA loans come with zero mortgage insurance. They have what's called a finance fee or VA finance fee on the front end of it that's financed into the loan, but they don't add anything onto the payment. Like I said, they have lower interest rates, but they have very flexible credit standards. There actually is no debt ratio guideline when it comes to VA loans. It has to do with what we call residual income. And based on how much money you have left after the payment versus what you actually bring home, how many people are in your household, things like that. But the goal is to put active duty, retired, disabled veterans into homes. And if you've ever served, I don't care if it's for 1 year, 2 years, whatever, we can double check to see if you qualify for possibly a VA loan. If you were in and you were disabled, you might have what we call the golden ticket. That's zero down and zero upfront mortgage insurance because of the being hurt or disabled in the line of duty. So we can check all that for you for free. And a lot of times we forget to ask people because if they don't tell us, we won't know. So we try and put that into our vocabulary just to ask people, because I've had people that were going through all the motions and then I find out they served for 1 year, they got hurt, and they're actually considered disabled. And they're like, I just assumed I wouldn't qualify for that. Well, we always want to ask the questions. We always want to help those who have served us. So that, again, that's for veterans, that's for active duty, it's for eligible spouses. If your spouse had unfortunately lost their life, or become disabled or through divorce and things like that, sometimes the spouses can still qualify. So using those benefits. So those who served deserved every advantage. And I 100% believe that. All right, let's talk about the last one, conventional loans. We all love conventional loans because they're going to have very aggressive rates based on the people who have really high credit scores and really good credit and long credit histories. Usually we see conventional loans more on a second purchase, meaning someone's on their second home that they're buying, they're selling the first one, buying the next one. Or we see it on a refinance. People will use it to refinance out of the other loans to get rid of mortgage insurance and things like that. But you can do a conventional loan as low as 3% down. You are going to have stronger credit because your credit will 100% dictate what your interest rate is. So they have brackets like 700 to 739, 740 to 769, to 799, 800 plus, right? The higher you get, the better your interest rate. Okay, just want to say that. You can have lower mortgage insurance, the better your credit is. So those are things we look at, but it's best for buyers with stronger credit and more stable income. So we always ask people, do you understand what waiting costs you when we're doing this? So waiting has a price, and this graph kind of explains it because rents keep rising pretty much every year. Homes get more expensive on average, normally in normal markets every year. So you lose years of equity the more you wait. The line that hits the hardest for most people is waiting doesn't make buying easier. It actually makes it harder. Yes, we have those 2 or 3 times in history where we get a pullback in values, but it's not pulling back enough to offset the years that you were renting, waiting for the pullback. So this is from apartmentlist.com, but it shows the cost of rents, average rents going up. And you say, well, wait a minute. this is just for 2014 because people are like, hey, I'm in this one. I'm in California. I pay $3,000 a month. I get that. That's not what they're trying to show here. They're basically trying to show you that in 1960, for every $568 in rent that you paid, that's gone up to $670, then $698, but now it's worth about $934. So if you're paying 4 times that, then you're paying 4 times the $934. It's all about the percentages, and that's what we are talking about. It's gone up 170%, right? Think about that. The cost of living in a house with a fixed rate loan hasn't gone up 170%. There's a huge, vast difference between renting and owning. And people say, oh, you know what, but I can invest the extra in difference. Well, can you? Because depending on the market you're in, there might not be much difference between renting and owning. And so unless you're in one of those markets where there's a vast difference, and there's not too many of them, I can't even think of one off the top of my head where that could be, because I'm talking to you from Georgia right now, and I can tell you right now, rents are very high. It almost makes more sense to buy than it does to rent. Plus, when you got to put first and last month down. If you got a pet, you got to put a pet deposit. You're almost putting down a house payment when you think about it. So unless you're moving, unless you're just not settled, you don't know where you want to be, there's reasons to rent, but there's also a lot of reasons to buy. Renting equals 100% interest. Don't never forget that. That's a fact. All right. So what's your next step? Well, it's not just about money. It's your own space, right? It's pride of ownership. It's stability. It's a place to grow. A home is where life happens. You're going to have to sleep on a pillow somewhere tonight. The question is, are you sleeping on a pillow in somebody else's house that you're paying rent and building their equity and their generational wealth? Or would you rather sleep on a pillow in your house where every payment, a little bit more ownership comes your way? Every year, a few more percentages of equity come your way that you own and that you'll keep. If you'd like, I'd love to meet with you, do a free one-on-one just to go through and see where you're at, but I'll put my information in the chat bar. Appointment calendar, set any time you want. It's 100% free, but we could book a one-on-one call. We can build equity together to try and figure out what you're doing. But I want you to think about that. Every night when you go to sleep, you're putting your head on a pillow somewhere. And that's true of everybody in the whole world, right? We're all sleeping somewhere tonight. The question is, are we sleeping in a place that's building us generational wealth and building a legacy for our family and our kids and our next generation? Or are we building somebody else's legacy and their generational wealth? So that's a concept I'd like you to think about as we're finishing up here. So let's end with this. Your next step is pretty simple. Just book a free one-on-one with my home buyer call. I'll have no pressure. There's personalized options. As you can tell, there's a lot of loans. We can just see, what do you qualify for? Where are you at? What's holding you up? Maybe that's sometimes the biggest thing that we should talk about. What's holding you up? We can put together clear answers and a custom game plan. You don't need to be ready. You just need to start. That's probably the biggest item that's holding most people back, is just start. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Stop renting, start building wealth. Your future starts with one conversation. Hey, my name is Rich Hanlin. My phone number is 916-474-9051. My email is right there, rhanlin.xhl@gmail.com. And again, I'll put my appointment calendar down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to get a one-on-one with you. I'm in Georgia, Eastern Standard Time, but I'm in all the states, and I could help you get to that home ownership thought process a lot faster than most people can, because I am good at what I do. All right, signing off. I appreciate your time.